One way to get started quickly on a project is to go to the Insert tab, Link CAD, and then if you point to the location of your DWG files, what you could do is grab a DWG file and link it into your Revit file. So I'm just using all of the default settings. And there it is. So what I can do is I can trace over the top of my file to create my building. Now let me just explain some of the settings. So what I'm going to do is just delete the file that I linked. When I say link a CAD file, and I pick on the file that I want to link in, I've got the option of keeping the colors the same or inverting them, so that if AutoCAD has a black background and the line colors are set to make it highly readable against that, Revit has a white background, and so inverting it would make it readable. You wouldn't, for example, be losing like yellow colors against a white background. Preserving them as they are or changing it to black and white. I'm going to say change it to black and white. Layers, I can say just bring in the visible, or I can say specify. So if I just say bring in the visible, then those that are turned off in the AutoCAD file or those that are frozen in the AutoCAD file won't be brought in. I'm going to say specify just so I can show you how it works and you get a list of the layers that you want to bring in. Auto detect is fine. It's going to look at the units in AutoCAD which are inches and the units in Revit which are feet and make the change that's necessary. Center to center or origin to origin are the other options here, beyond the scope of what I'm doing, but center to center will work just fine. The center of the view in AutoCAD, or the center of the zoom extents area, brought into the center of my view here. And then orient to view is okay, and current view only is that I can choose to limit the view to this one view. For example, if I'm on level 1, if I had a different floor plan for level 2 of the building, then I would limit the view of my DWG files to these specific views. If I want to see the 2D drawing in 3D, I would check that off. But right now what I can do is say open it up. One more thing before I forget. If a line is within about 4 degrees of being horizontal or vertical, Revit will correct it. So if it was actually meant to be that way, you would check that off so that it doesn't automatically correct. So if I say open, because I'd said specify, I see a list of all of the layers. So for example, if I wanted to, I could switch off equipment, or I'll leave the rest on. I think the wall pattern I don't care about, but you see that I could actually limit which layers I have shown in my model. So if I pick on that, you would see that I can move it around. I can drag it and move it around. Probably one of the things I want to do is select it and then pin it so that I don't accidentally move it from this point on. The other thing that I want to emphasize here is that under View Graphics, which is VG, if you key that in, if you look under Import Categories and you expand, there's the name of the file that I've linked, and these are options that I can switch on and off. So if, for example, I wanted to turn off the structural grid, I can turn it off in this view so that I don't see it in my project. But now the benefit to me of having it on, so I'm going to do a Control Z to go back, is that I can now start to draft very quickly in Revit. For example, if I go to Architecture and I go to Grid and I use the option which is to pick lines with an offset of 0, then you notice that what I can be doing is actually creating my grids on top of the grid lines that were part of the DWG file. Right, so very easy for me just to come along and start drawing my grid. I won't do all of them because you've seen how I can do it. If I go in the other direction and I were to come in here, that was an option where I could be changing the character of the letter and then continuing and having it increment. Let me undo all of that, because I guess the proper way for me to show you it would have been I should have placed a grid on here, and then before proceeding any further I should have changed that to A, and now every subsequent selection it will increment the value. If I was to place a grid, say, on top of this, and I change that to say 1, then you notice as I continue the command it goes 2, 3, 4 and so on until I've got my grids in. Then the other way I can use this is to start drafting. So if I were to say let's draw a wall, and I can pick the size of my wall. I'm just going to go with the 8-inch at the moment. It doesn't matter because it's kind of like a placeholder. I can be drawing the center line if I'm actually drawing it onto the wall that's part of my building. I just drew it on that small area of the wall. If I've got a center line to snap to in my drawing, I can be drafting here. The other way, of course, would be if I was drawing a wall and I was using the pick lines, and I was to say I'm going to pick the outside face or the inside face of the wall itself. I'll just show you. I'll say finish face exterior. Suppose I come down here. If I were to be picking on these, what I'm doing is actually creating my wall on top of the other walls. Now I can adjust the sizes of any of these. So the wall that I had there was actually 4 inches. So if I pick the wall, I say edit the type, duplicate, generic 4-inch, and OK, and then I'm going into the structure of the wall to say that my generic 4-inch actually just has 4 inches for the width of the structure. When I do that, you see that I can change the size of the walls. So now if I were to tab on top of here to select all of these walls, I could change them from being one style to being another style, to change the walls itself. So I can draw like that. Let me switch off the display of the background file. So if I go imported CADs, and I'm just going to say don't show the categories in this view, then the point that I wanted to make is that even if I just place 1 or 2 walls, under the modify tab I have commands like trim and extend, where what I can be doing is kind of trimming up the geometry that's part of my building. So it lets you draft very quickly on top of something that's already there, and you can, with the VG option, imported categories, you can turn it on and off even for individual layers. One other thing that you might do, I'm just going to show you it. If I go to import CADs, is I could say, well, that's my background file, but I want to have that in halftone. And so if I go back now, it becomes a bit clearer that I've actually got Revit objects on top of a halftone background file there.